Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're not just looking at the money in your wallet. We're diving deep into the very architecture of value.
Exactly.
We're talking about the legal scaffolding, the historical foundation, and the high-speed come that turns a piece of metal or, a digital entry into something you can actually use.
It's a fascinating exploration, especially when you look at it through the lens of, say, Indian financial concepts and regulations, which are incredibly precise about what money even is.
Right.
We use it every single day. But I think few people realize how much command, law, and, frankly, high-tech plumbing is needed to make it all work.
Absolutely. So our mission today is to move beyond just being a consumer of currency. We want you to really understand its foundational status, why a government can just decree value, how that value evolved from, ancient bartering, and what happens when that legal status is suddenly yanked away.
It's a journey, really. From a simple tribal trade all the way to a 247 real-time electronic payment.
And I think if you leave this deep dive understanding the difference between fiat money and legal tender.
Yeah, that's a big one.
And how a 9-digit code protects your check, then I think we've done our job.
I agree. It's a story of human ingenuity, constantly trying to solve the problem of trust and efficiency.
Okay, so let's start at the very, very beginning of economic history. I mean, way back. The barter system.
Right, object-for-object trade, famously used by early communities like those in Mesopotamia.
It sounds so beautifully simple on paper, but the reality was it just created massive economic stagnation, didn't it?
It did. The elegance quickly dissolves when you run into its most fundamental roadblock.
The double coincidence of wants.
That's the one. And that concept is the absolute key to understanding why money was invented in the first place.
You can't make a trade unless two very specific things happen at the same time.
Exactly. You have to find someone who has what you want, and at the same time, that same person has to want what you have.
It's an incredibly restrictive system.
Think about the economic devastation this causes. I mean, if I'm a potter and I have 100 pots and all I need is a sack of rice.
You can't just go to the farmer.
I can't. I need to find the specific farmer who wants a pot right now. And if that farmer wants a goat, well, now I have to go find a goat first just so I can trade the goat for the rice.
It turns a simple purchase into this frustrating, multi-step chain reaction.
And the sources are clear that this wasn't just, a theoretical problem. It translated into real crippling costs that held societies back.
What kind of cost are we talking about?
Well, first you had immense search costs. The physical time and energy you spend just looking for that one person. Imagine wasting days just to find a trading partner.
And then even when you find them, the deal isn't done.
Not at all. Then you have high transaction costs. The whole process of agreeing on the value. Is my one big pot worth half a sack of rice? Or maybe 3 chickens? The negotiation itself was just exhausting and completely subjective.
And structurally, this must have prevented any kind of real economic specialization.
Oh, completely. Specialization is the engine of wealth, right. But if you're a highly skilled weaver, you can't spend all your time weaving. You have to constantly manage your payments.
Especially if you're getting paid in things that go bad.
Exactly. Your wealth literally rots away.
Yeah.
And that leads to the third most debilitating issue, storage issues. You couldn't save value for the future. If you got paid in a basket of fruit, you had to use that value immediately before it spoiled.
So people had to hold their wealth in other things, like cattle or land.
Cumbersome things, things you can't easily divide or trade. Money, just by being abstract and non-perishable, solved that storage problem instantly.
So humanity figures out we need an abstraction, right? A standardized tool that everyone accepts.
And that's when money steps in and takes on a very defined job description. And it all starts with 2 core functions that just eliminate that barter problem.
These are the primary functions.
Yes, what I absolutely must do to even be considered money. The first, the most foundational, is to be a medium of exchange.
It's the lubricant of trade.
A perfect way to put it. It severs the double coincidence of wants. I don't need to know what the tea stall owner wants. I just need to know he accepts rupees.
And the second primary function is just as crucial, the measure of value.
Without this, a common yardstick, you can't compare anything. Money gives us that standard unit. If a pen is 10 rupees and a book is 100 rupees, we instantly know the book is 10 times more valuable.
It allows for pricing, for accounting, for everything in a modern economy.
You can't calculate debt or profit or loss without a standard unit of measure. It's impossible.
Okay, so once those primary jobs are set, we can buy things with it and measure things with it, then its utility starts to expand.
It does. It moves into the secondary functions, which build directly on top of the first two.
The first being that store of value we just talked about.
Exactly. The function that lets us move purchasing power across time. I can save my money today and trust that they will buy me something 6 months from now or 6 years from now.
And saving gets a lot easier when you can also move that value easily.
Which is the next one. The transfer of value. The ability to abstract value means you can move it digitally across the world in a second. You can send wealth to your family without physically shipping gold bars.
And for a modern consumer economy, this next one is maybe the most important secondary function, deferred payments.
This is the entire credit system in a nutshell. It's the ability to take on a debt now and agree to pay it off over time.
Your EMIs, your home loan, your credit card.
All of it. It all depends on the fact that the currency will hold a relatively stable value over that payment period. If money wasn't a reliable store of value, credit markets would just vanish.
Okay, now let's get into the most advanced roles, the contingent functions. This is where money becomes like an instrument of the state.
Money becomes the fundamental basis for the financial market. Every stock, every bond, every derivative,
Yeah.
it's all denominated and traded in a currency. If that currency is unstable, the whole financial system collapses.
It's the atomic unit.
It is. And it also plays a critical role in production.
How so?
It helps in mobilizing factors of production: land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship. The 4 pillars. They're all paid for with money. Workers get wages, capital gets interest, land gets rent. Without that unified medium, how would you incentivize anyone?
And finally, its role as a tool for the government, the redistribution of national income.
This is where politics and economics meet. Governments use money, through taxation and welfare, to achieve social goals. They tax the wealthy and redistribute that income through subsidies or safety nets. Money is the pipe through which those resources flow.
So now that we know what money does, let's trace what it actually was. We start with commodity money, right? Where the value was in the object itself.
Yes, this is the phase between pure barter and modern currency. The object had intrinsic value. You could use it for something else even if it wasn't accepted as money.
Like salt or grain or even cattle.
Exactly. Cattle were famously used in ancient Rome. The word pecunia for money comes from picasex, for cattle.
But even with that intrinsic value, the system was still really inefficient.
It was. You still had a huge lack of uniformity. Is every gold nugget the same size? Is every cocoa bean equally valuable? Purity was always a question. And how do you divide a cow if you only need to buy a loaf of bread?
Indivisibility, a huge problem.
Constant economic friction. And that's what pushed us to the next stage.
Which is when we move to metallic money. This is where we start seeing institutionalized trust.
This was the breakthrough. People realized gold and silver were great. They were durable, divisible, scarce. But they needed a way to guarantee the quality and weight.
So the authorities, kings, traders, they step in.
They do. They start stamping the metal. And that stamp wasn't just decoration. It was a guarantee of purity and weight. It told you, this object has exactly X grams of silver, and the king guarantees it.
That's where currency really starts to shift away from being a commodity and towards being a command.
Precisely. And in India, we have such a rich history of this. You see the amazing craftsmanship of the Indo-Greek and Kushana gold coins. The Gupta gold coins are famous around the world for their purity.
And later on,
The Delhi Sultanate introduces the silver tanka, a stable, verifiable coin. But the most direct ancestor of our modern currency is Sher Shah Suri's 16th century rupiah silver coin,
the rupiah.
an 11.5 grams standardized silver coin. It provided the market stability needed for long-distance trade.
That standardization was huge, but it didn't solve the core vulnerability of the system, did it? Where the metal itself held the value.
No, it didn't. The moment your face value is tied to the intrinsic value, you create an incentive for fraud. Or worse, state-sponsored fraud.
And this brings us to a really crucial distinction that separates ancient money from what we use today.
The difference between full-bodied and token coins.
Okay, what's a full-bodied coin?
A full-bodied coin is one where the intrinsic worth of the metal, which you'd get if you melted it down, was equal to, or sometimes even more than, the stamped face value. That Gupta gold coin, if it weighed 8 grams, its value was tied to that 8 grams of gold.
But that system is so vulnerable to a king who's short on cash. The process of debasement?
The ultimate trust breaker. When rulers like Aurangzeb needed money for wars, they'd start mixing in cheaper metals. They'd reduce the gold content, but keep the same face value.
And people would notice.
Immediately. You get Gresham's Law, Bad money drives good money out of circulation. People start hoarding the old pure coins, and the base currency causes inflation and market panic. It just proves that relying on intrinsic value is fundamentally unstable.
Which led us to the modern solution, the token coin.
The token coin completely inverts that trust equation. The intrinsic value of the material is drastically less than the face value.
So a modern 10 rupee coin
Is made of a copper-nickel blend. If you melted it, you wouldn't get anywhere near 10 rupees worth of metal.
Yeah.
Its value comes entirely from the government's declaration that it is, in fact, worth 10 rupees.
And it's interesting that all modern Indian coins are token coins, right? Governed by the Coinage Act of 2011.
They are. And they're designed that way on purpose, using cheaper metals to prevent the very problem of melting we saw in history. If the metal is worth less than the face value, there's no incentive to illegally melt them down.
So we've established that token coins have very little intrinsic value. But when we get to paper currency, we lose that intrinsic value completely.
We do. A 500 rupee note is just paper, cotton, and ink. If you tear it up, it's scrap. It has zero intrinsic value. Its entire worth is symbolic. It's an agreed-upon placeholder for value, and it's enforced by law.
And that enforcement brings us right to the concept of fiat money.
Fiat. From the Latin, let it be done. Fiat money is currency that has value simply because a government or central bank commands it to have value.
And the conditions for something to be fiat money are quite strict.
They are. It has to be a physical or digital unit that measures value, and critically, it must be issued by order of the government or its central bank, which in our case is the RBI.
Why is that second condition so important, that it has to be government issued?
Because the state is the ultimate guarantor of acceptance and stability within its borders. Without that state command, trust breaks down. This is the exact reason why something like Bitcoin, despite its popularity, is not considered fiat money in India. It lacks that sovereign guarantee.
Okay, now the issuance structure in India is more complicated than most people think. It's not just the RBI, is it?
No, it's a critical distinction based on different laws. The government of India, under the Coinage Act, issues all the coins, from 50 paisa to 20 rupees.
But there's an anomaly.
A genuine anomaly. The government of India also issues the 1 rupee note.
The 1 rupee note is the odd one out. It's the only paper currency signed by the finance secretary, and it's the only one that doesn't have that famous promise on it.
Exactly. The finance secretary's signature shows it's a direct liability of the government, not the central bank. All the other notes, from 2 rupees up to 500, are issued by the Reserve Bank of India under the RBI Act of 1934.
And those notes are the ones that carry the RBI governor's signature and that iconic line, "I promise to pay the bearer."
Yes, that phrase is the literal manifestation of the RBI's commitment, straight from its founding laws. This dual system is unique and really shows the deep legal architecture behind our money.
So let's unpack that promise, because what it meant historically is totally different from what it means today.
No, completely different. Historically, that paper note was basically a receipt. The promise meant the bank would exchange that piece of paper for an equivalent amount of gold or silver coins. It was a conversion pledge, linking the fiat currency back to something with real, full-bodied value.
But we're not on the gold standard anymore. That pledge is gone. So what does that promise mean on a modern 500 rupee note?
It has been profoundly redefined. The promise now simply means the RBI guarantees to exchange that note for other government-issued currency of the same nominal face value.
So if I bring a 500 rupee note to the RBI,
they promise to give you 5 100 rupee notes or 203 100s, or the equivalent in token coins.
So it's a promise of exchangeability within the system, not a promise of retaining intrinsic value.
Precisely. It's a promise that 500 rupees will always equal 500 rupees in the currency system, regardless of what inflation has done to its actual purchasing power. It is not linked to gold.
Moving to the physical note itself, the amount of cultural and technical detail on there is just fascinating.
It's a dense tapestry of national identity, really. You have the rupee symbol, designed by Uday Kumar in 2010. You have the lion emblem from the Sarnath pillar, and, of course, the national motto, Satyam Jayate.
Truth alone triumphs, from the Mundaka Upanishad.
And then there's the language count.
What's the official count on a single note?
A total of 17 languages. You have Hindi and English on the front, and then on the back there's a panel where the denomination is written in 15 of India's official regional languages. It's an incredible commitment to multilingualism.
And speaking of that diverse population, the RBI rolled out a fantastic piece of tech in 2020 for accessibility, the MANI app.
Yes, the Mobile Aided Note Identifier. This was a huge step for the estimated 80 lakh visually impaired people in India. The app uses your phone's camera to scan a note and then announces the denomination through audio,
And crucially, it works offline.
which is so important for people in rural areas without constant internet. It even has vibration patterns for those who might be deafblind. It's a great example of financial inclusion.
But there's a major limitation that the RBI is very clear about.
Yes, and this is a vital security point. The MANI app is designed only to identify the denomination. It explicitly states that it cannot determine the authenticity of the note. It cannot tell you if it's fake or genuine.
Why would they design it that way? Why not just add a counterfeit detector?
That's a great question, and it gets into both technical limits and legal liability. Real-time counterfeit detection is incredibly hard to do with a standard phone camera. You need to verify complex security features, magnetic inks, microprinting.
Screens a phone can't see.
Exactly. But more importantly, imagine if the RBI gave people a tool that falsely verified a fake note. The central bank would be open to massive legal challenges, so they have to reserve authenticity checks for banks and authorized machines.
Okay, this is the moment where we need to nail down the most important legal distinction of this whole deep dive. We have fiat money. Now we need to define legal tender.
Okay. Legal tender is a subcategory of fiat money. It is the fiat money that has been granted specific legal backing to settle debts. Fiat is about who issues it. Legal tender is about compulsory acceptance.
And the consequence of that is huge. If I owe you money and I offer you payment in legal tender,
I cannot legally refuse to accept it to settle that debt. It's the law's way of making sure debts can be finalized and that trust in the currency can't just be withdrawn by one person.
okay, let's run through the case studies the sources provide because they show how these two statuses can be separated.
Let's start with the baseline. The current Indian rupee. It's issued by the government, or RBI, so it's fiat money. The law says you have to accept it, so it's also legal tender. Simple.
Now for the big one. The demonetized 500,000 rupee notes from 2016.
Okay. They were originally issued by the RBI, so they are still fiat money. That never changes. But the 2016 action legally removed their legal tender status.
Which means a shopkeeper can legally refuse them.
Correct. They are no longer a valid way to settle a debt in public.
What about foreign currency, like the US dollar?
The US dollar is fiat money in the US, but it's not legal tender here in India. A shop might accept it, but they are not legally required to.
And finally, things like checks or demand drafts.
Neither. They aren't issued as currency by the government, so they are not fiat money. And because of that, they're also not legal tender. You are perfectly entitled to refuse a check and ask for cash or digital payment.
This brings us to another really crucial and often confused point. The difference between demonetization and a simple withdrawal.
Demonetization is the legal nuclear option. It's the complete removal of a currency's legal tender status, like we saw in 2016.
Now, let's contrast that with the 2,000 rupee note, which was withdrawn starting in May 2023.
This is the critical point. The 2,000 rupee note was withdrawn, not demonetized. It actually still retains its legal tender status.
So legally, I can still use it to pay a debt.
Legally, yes. In practice, you might have a hard time getting a shop to accept it. But the RBI simply stopped printing them a few years ago and is now just collecting them to tidy up the system.
And the official reasons they gave for this were fascinating because they were so logistical.
They were strictly non-political. The RBI cited three main reasons. One, it was always meant as a temporary measure to deal with the cash shortage after 2016.
Okay.
Two, the data showed it just wasn't commonly used for everyday transactions. And three, it supports the RBI's clean note policy because most of those notes were 4 to 5 years old and reaching the end of their lifespan.
But the public often sees any high-value note withdrawal through the lens of corruption and black money, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't that create a trust problem for the RBI?
It creates a huge communication challenge. The public's default assumption is based on the 2016 shock. By sticking to technical policy-based reasons, the RBI is trying to signal stability and normal central banking practice. But yes, the challenge is that when a big note disappears, people get nervous, and the bank has to communicate very carefully to prevent a perception of instability.
So even within the category of legal tender, there are limits on how much you have to accept.
Yes, we distinguish between limited and unlimited legal tender.
What are limited legal tenders?
These are currencies that a creditor can legally refuse if the amount is too large. This is defined by the Coinage Act of 2011, and it's for practical reasons. You don't want someone paying a 1,000,000 rupee debt in 50 paisa coins.
Right, it would be impossible to manage. So what are the actual limits?
They're very specific. 50 paisa coins can only be used to settle debts up to 10 rupees. That's 20 coins. For coins of 1 rupee and above, the limit is much higher, but it's still capped at 1,000 rupees.
And on the other side, we have unlimited legal tenders.
That's all the banknotes issued by the RBI, everything from the 2 rupee note up to the 500. Legally, these can be used to settle any amount of debt, and a creditor cannot refuse them.
But there's a real-world catch, isn't there, regarding large cash payments?
There is. While the notes are legally unlimited, the government, through the Finance Act of 2017, restricts cash transactions to less than 2 lakh rupees. This is to discourage tax evasion. So it's a tax rule, not a limit on the note's legal tender status itself.
Okay, we are now firmly in the modern era, moving beyond physical cash into the huge world of bank money or deposit money.
This is where most of our wealth actually lives. It's the money held as digital entries in bank accounts. The trust shifts from a king's stamp to the security of a centralized software system.
And let's revisit that distinction. A check is not money.
It's the essential insight. Money is the unit of measure, the 15 rupees. A check is just an instrument, an instruction that tells a bank to move that 15 rupees from one account to another.
And the law that governs this is incredibly old.
It's a fantastic example of legal durability. The Negotiable Instruments Act, 1881, a Victorian-era law that still governs everything about checks' validity, forgery, what happens when one bounces.
Wow. And just to be clear, who are the parties in a check transaction?
You have the drawer, who writes the check, the drawee, which is the drawer's bank, and the payee, the person who receives the money.
We also have time limits, like a stale check.
Right, which becomes invalid after 3 months.
Okay.
And a post-dated check, which you can't cash until the future date written on it.
Now, banks have other paper tools, like the demand draft. How is that different?
A demand draft, or DD, removes the risk you have with a check. It's prepaid. The bank takes the money from the customer before issuing the draft. So the recipient knows the payment is 100% guaranteed. That's why universities often demand a DD.
And another key tool, especially for financial inclusion, is the overdraft.
An overdraft is basically a short-term, pre-approved loan. It lets you withdraw more than you have in your account, up to a certain limit. It's a vital safety net, especially in schemes like the Jan Dhan Yojana account for low-income users.
Now, to make all this money move, there's a whole plumbing system of codes and technology underneath.
Let's start with the IFSC code, the Indian Financial System Code. It's that 11-digit code that is the unique digital address for a specific bank branch. It's how the money finds its way.
And then there's that mysterious code at the bottom of checks, the MICR code.
MICR stands for Magnetic Ink Character Recognition. It's a 9-digit code printed in special ink with iron oxide. It allows machines to read it at high speed, which is crucial for automated check processing and for security.
And the technology that lets us treat a huge bank as one single entity is the core banking solution, or CBS.
CBS is the bank's central nervous system. It's a huge software platform that connects every single branch to one central server. Before CBS, if you deposited money in Chennai, you might have to wait days to get it in Mumbai. With CBS, it's instant. It enables branchless banking.
The reliance on physically moving paper was the big bottleneck for decades. The solution was the check truncation system.
Yes, the check truncation system, CTS. Truncation just means cutting short. Instead of physically flying the paper check across the country, the bank just sends a high-resolution scanned image. Let's call it IMGA.
So the physical paper just stays put. What's the main benefit?
Speed. Massive speed and efficiency. Settlement times have dropped from days to, in many cases, just a few hours. It has unlocked huge amounts of liquidity in the economy.
But moving to digital images opens up new kinds of fraud. So the RBI introduced the positive pay mechanism.
This is a really clever security feature designed to protect the drawer, the person writing the check, from fraud.
How does it work?
When the drawer writes a high-value check, they also send a separate digital confirmation to their own bank. This could be a photo of the check or just the key details. The amount, the date, the payee's name. Let's call this IMGB.
Okay, so when the recipient deposits the check,
the system automatically compares the scan from the recipient's bank, IMGA, with the original data submitted by the drawer, IMGB. If a fraudster changed the amount from, say, 70,000 to 7,000, the images won't match.
And the payment is rejected?
Immediately. The drawer's funds are protected. It's a brilliant technical enforcement of trust.
So bank money today moves mainly through 3 big electronic systems. They all do the same thing, but their architecture is completely different.
That's right. You have NEFT and RTGS, which are run by the RBI, and IMPS, which is run by NPCI.
Let's start with NFT, the National Electronic Funds Transfer.
NFAT is for retail and smaller transfers. The
Hmm.
key thing is that it operates in 30-minute batches, 247. All the transactions in that window are pooled and settled together. So it's efficient, but it's not instant.
Contrast that with RTGS, real-time gross settlement.
RTGS is for the big, high-value transfers. The name says it all. Real-time means it's instant, and gross settlement means transactions are processed one by one, not batched. This eliminates settlement risk for big money. It's the high-security backbone for the corporate world.
And then there's the one most of us use on our phones, IMPS, the Immediate Payment Service.
IMPS is the pure speed demon from NPCI. It's for retail amounts, and it's also instant. The main difference is that while NEFT and RTGS are now free, IMPS often has a small fee, plus GST. But its convenience on mobile apps makes it the default for most people.
The scale of these systems makes them critical infrastructure. But what happens if there's a major national crisis, a war, a natural disaster?
The RBI is planning for that. They're developing the LPSS, the Lightweight Payment and Settlement System. It's an official emergency backup.
How is it lightweight?
It's designed to run with minimal infrastructure and staff. It's so that even if the main systems are down, the country can still process critical government and interbank transactions, maintaining some financial continuity during chaos.
And moving from a national crisis to everyday security, the RBI has rolled out a new safety feature for NFT and RTGS, like the one we see on UPI.
Yes, the beneficiary account name lookup. Before this, if you typed in the wrong account number, the money could just vanish. The system didn't check the name.
A huge source of errors and fraud.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, when you enter the account number and IFSC, the system checks with the other bank and displays the beneficiary's name for you to confirm. It's a simple check that dramatically reduces errors and brings the same level of trust we have in mobile payments to these high-value systems.
This deep dive has really shown us that money is less about what it's made of and everything to do with command law and trust. We've traced value from a physical commodity, through the debased coins of struggling kings, all the way to the digital command structure of fiat and legal tender.
The story of money is the story of evolving trust systems. The value is now completely abstract, relying on the state's legal mandate and the seamless function of high-speed code, from the CBS, holding your balance, to the positive pay system protecting your check.
Let's leave everyone with 3 key takeaways from this.
Okay. First, remember the legal difference. Fiat money is just currency issued by the state. Legal tender is what the law compels you to accept to settle a debt.
Second, the difference between actions. Demonetization removes the legal status entirely. Withdrawal is just a logistical move to pull notes from circulation while they remain legally valid, like with the 2,000 rupee note.
And finally, appreciate the sophistication of modern banking plumbing. Systems like CTS and positive pay are the invisible heroes that speed up our economy while actively fighting fraud.
Which leaves us with a final provocative thought. Our economic system is now completely uncoupled from physical assets. The promise to pay is just a guarantee of exchange between 2 token instruments. If the resilience of our entire financial lives rests not on physical security, but on the integrity of software, the lines of code running CBS, RTGS, and positive pay, how much deeper is the trust we now place in technology than the trust we ever placed in the kings who stamped the gold? It makes you realize that the most valuable thing in your bank account isn't the number, but the invisible security architecture holding it all together.